Salutations, ship captains, Automatic here for Automatic Games, and thanks for joining me for this, another video dedicated to a discussion of ship classes in Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. Today's ship is going to be the Berserk Class Carrier, a light carrier if there ever was one. It boasts one squadron hangar, so yeah, it can only have one squadron. And let's talk about its specs. Let's not really get into its history. You can find that information online. I might point out that this is one ship that was featured in the show, so that's an interesting aside. Now, let's talk about armor. In terms of armor, in terms of its side plating, there are some areas that are actually weaker than the Manticore-class Corvette, so that's not good. However, its overall hull is actually stronger than the Manticore-class Corvette. In terms of Drata's range, it boasts a pretty good range, only bested by that Corvette. In terms of maneuverability, this is a fine ship. This is a solid ship when it comes to maneuverability and speed. In fact, speed-wise, it's only bested by the Manticore. However, its turn rate leaves a little to be desired. You know, that's relatively speaking, of course. Again, up against the Manticore, its turn rate is on par with that of the frigate, which is neither horrible nor the best. But suffice to say, it's pretty good. So yeah, you know, in terms of armament, it lacks munitions, and that's an important aspect to keep in mind. However, it does have broadside guns and potent guns at that. It's got 5 on both its starboard and port, and those are located up top, so that's an important feature to keep in mind. 5 guns is actually more than the frigate boasts. Now we're going to take a look at this ship in action and explore some of its features and just see what this thing's capable of. The Asteria has been ordered to determine the fate of the Manticore-class Lisbon, which is a ship that we featured in our previous training video. As you can see, the Lisbon has been taken out of action. We have a pair of Raptors investigating that ship, scanning for signs of life, but those scans are not producing positive results. So something took out the Lisbon, and it is up to the captain of the Asteria to determine what that was. He's been ordered to engage only if he has to. Otherwise, he's to gather intel and get back to Daedalus Station. Now, these Raptors, they are not technically assigned to the Asteria. In fact, they're flying independent of that ship. Having said that, Raptors can dock with any allied ship regardless of that ship's current hangar capacity. So even though the Asteria does have a squadron of Viper Mark IIs, the Raptors can still dock with it. Of course, you might say, well, this is cheating, then the Raptors come from somewhere else, and yes, they kind of do. You know, if I were rolling with the Daedalus fleet, I don't think it's out of the realm of good strategy to arm the actual space station with Raptors and leave it up to ship captains to field Viper Mark IIs. I don't think many captains are inclined to take Raptors. In fact, in terms of Steam discussions, Raptors are kind of frowned upon, which is unfortunate. Now, we do have contacts on Dratus, one of which is a squadron of raiders, which are on an intercept course. There are 2 other contacts, as of yet, unidentified. Seeing as that is the case, the captain of the Asteria is going to order these Raptors, well, not totally to return to the ship, but he's going to put them on a defensive posture, at least bringing them in close to the ship. We are also going to assign these Raptors to a group, which is very, very important. We're going to designate them Green Squadron. And the reason I say that's important is if you launch a bunch of squadrons in the same turn, and you order one squadron to do one errand, well, that order is actually going to be translated as across the board. Every squadron that you have deployed will move to accomplish that mission. And sometimes, obviously, that's not what you're going to want. Other times, sure, maybe you want all of your squadrons to serve as one unified wing. But the way to avoid that is to designate them as different squadrons. Now, we have set the Asteria to a full defensive posture. We are also launching our Viper Mark II squadron. We will designate them next turn. Finally, we are going to drop the Asteria in elevation, because again, its broadside guns are topside, so the lower this thing flies, generally the better. You don't want to fly so damn low that you're out of range. But yeah, this is a ship that wants to fly lower than its opponent.
IFF confirms unit is hostile.
So we're opening up with our broadside cannons, but we don't have focus fire on, so the rate of fire isn't what it could be. That might be an oversight. It might just be, let's pull a save here. A CYA. And say that we're just doing that to show you the difference in rate of fire, even though we already touched on that in the last video. And we have identified the other enemy ship. The other enemy contact is a Nemesis class. We are designating our Mark II squadron as Blue Squadron, and we're ordering them to attack the Raiders.
Squadron target is confirmed.
Now, of course, those Nemesis-class corvettes, fielded by the Cylons, they're capable of hacking. But, you know, we've got that Raptor Squadron dedicated to defending the Asteria. And if need be, if a hack were to occur, we can have the Raptors dock with the ship that is the target of the hack.
Hostile unit identified.
It'll actually boost the firewall. Maybe we'll be able to see that in action. Perhaps not. We do have missiles inbound, courtesy of that Nemesis-class corvette. Well, we can deal with that, too. We can have our squadrons intercept those missiles and act as point defense. In fact, the Raptors already are by default, you know, just by nature of them being under a defensive order. We're going to issue a similar order to our Viper Squadron. And there are 6 missiles inbound. Now, I'm not confident enough to say that we will eliminate each one of those missiles, but each missile that we do eliminate, you know, that's better for the Asteria. There's no question about that. So yeah, this is the Mauna Loa. Interesting name. In campaign, a lot of times those enemy ships are designated CY and then a number. Now, the Asteria is going to turn about 15 degrees to port. I believe it does have a lower elevation than its target. In terms of range, that Nemesis is just out of range, but we can deal with that. We're going to switch our target from the Raiders to the Nemesis, and that will increase our range, which will not be demonstrated by your firing fields if you bring them up. However, it does, in fact, increase your range, and as discussed in our last video, it increases your rate of fire. Now, both squadrons have been ordered to intercept those missiles, and intercept incoming. They did. Not one of those 6 missiles reached our ship. Nonetheless, it's good to exercise caution, so, you know, we're going to remain on that defensive posture, no matter what the outcome. Again, we're going to turn just slightly to port. But you know what? I better not say slightly. I do not like slightly. Let's talk in degrees. Let's go about 20 degrees to port and lower elevation. You know, I hate to say it, but when a captain, you know, when I'm trying to follow their orders, and they say slightly this direction or slightly that direction, I don't know what that means, you know? You know, I think the most effective way to do it is talk in degrees. You know, be it 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or anywhere in between, or less than 45 degrees. So we got a good firing arc in terms of our broadside cannons. In the meantime, we've still got our Raptors on defense. And our fighter squadron is actively engaging those Raiders. So we're going to do a 90-degree turn, even more than a 90-degree turn if we can pull it off to starboard. And sure enough, here comes the hack from the Nemesis-class corvette. And they're attempting to break through our firewall. And they're not doing too bad a job of it. We are on full defensive posture. But we better get those Raptors docked aboard the Asteria so they can help boost our firewall. And in doing so, I mean, you'll find that it's extremely effective. Meanwhile, our fighters are moving to engage the Nemesis-class corvette, seeing as they already decimated that Raptor Squadron. So here we go. Let's go ahead and dock. And again, you're going to see how effective this is, and it might give you a new appreciation. So yeah, they'll go ahead and dock with the Asteria, and that's a good deal. In fact, let's get off of the Raptors and back on the Asteria. So as you can see, the firewall is actually regenerating, despite the hack. It's actually building back up. So the hack is completely stifled at this point. The Nemesis is just wasting its time. And certainly their hack will never reach our subsystem at this rate. And these Raptors are so potent in doing so that you can actually switch to offensive posture again. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. His hack is screwed. He cannot best those Raptors. So we're going to go back to offensive posture and continue to pour our fire into the Nemesis from a lower elevation, since that offers us the most ideal firing solution. Now there's a Talon class, also on Dratus at this point, and it too is opening up. You know, whoever referred to this carrier as a glass cannon would eat their words if they saw this thing was up against both a carrier and a corvette, and nonetheless the Asteria is going to hold its own. So posture-wise, we are going to go back to defensive. Not because of the hack, but simply because we're taking fire from two ships, and our right side armor is suffering as a result. Meanwhile, our firewall continues to regenerate in spite of that attempted hack. And so as you can see, this video isn't necessarily completely dedicated to the carrier. It's also dedicated to the Raptors and the Vipers. Well, there goes the Nemesis. It just couldn't hang with the broadside capabilities of the Asteria, which of course was complemented by the Viper Squadron actively attacking the Nemesis. And a Viper Squadron, especially the Mark IIs on their own, can severely damage a target. So that's another important aspect to keep in mind. You can fight from long range. Having said that, the Ceretes attack gunships, fielded by the Cylons, well, their main purpose is to be anti-fighter. We are switching our focus fire to the Talon at this juncture in hopes of inflicting some damage on that ship. We're also going to switch our posture. Actually, we're going to boost
full power
thrusters.
to thrusters.
We're going to get out of gun range. You know, I had just mentioned long range. Let's try it out. This may be short-lived, but we're going to attempt it anyways. We're also going to drop elevation, which again, since we're boosting thrusters, is not going to be the extreme angle afforded us if we were not boosting thrusters, but nonetheless, you might as well go down. The Asteria loves to go down, and you can read into that however which way you prefer. And this Cylon ship's called the Saratoga. Almost makes me think that it's stolen. And perhaps to some extent that's true. I mean, the tech is certainly stolen. That's probably true for anything in the first Cylon War is being fielded by those bastards. Now, we have ordered our Raptors to come in close and intercept the quote-unquote Saratoga. In fact, what we want them to do is demonstrate their rocket capability, and so they'll do that now. They'll go ahead and unleash rockets on this thing, and these are unguided ordnance, so you do want to be close to your target when you fire these rockets. If you're close enough, if your target is large enough, then you're golden. There we go. All 4 rockets find their target. And if we so desired, we could order the Raptors to dock. Well, actually, I take that back. We could only do that if they had a dedicated hangar. But say you launched Raptors from your ship, and then you order them to dock, they will replenish their munitions in 1 turn, and you can send them back out there with another payload. So that certainly is important to keep in mind if you're rolling with Raptors. The same can obviously be said for the Daedalus space station. Any Raptors launched from that could return to the station to not only repair, but replenish those munitions. Now, it appears the Talon is once again creeping into our gun range. So we're going to switch posture, back to offensive.
Action stations ready.
Returning about 40 degrees to starboard and showing them our starboard side. And we're going to have to change that soon because our starboard side armor is weakened substantially. However, it appears that the Talon is focused on trying to blast those Vipers out of the air, so yet another aspect of fighter craft. Great distractions. I've seen fleets actually change course to intercept fighters before, despite the fact that we all know that these capital ships have a hard time targeting such small targets. Their ordnance is best used aimed at other large ships. Yeah, this Talon's coming in headlong toward the Asteria. The Asteria, as a consequence, is getting an excellent firing arc on that enemy ship, which at this point is not long for this world. Now we're going to look at this thing's maneuverability a little bit. We're going to order the Asteria to come about and reveal its front and left sides to the enemy.
So say we all.
And that's another feature to keep in mind. You know, sometimes, and granted, it's all we can get at this point, and we're going to go into defensive mode. But, you know, sometimes it's not so much that you want to show them just your front side or just your left side. It's best to show them a multitude of sides. So if you can get it like that, where you're showing them your front and left, it spreads out the damage, you know what I mean? So, you know, if you have a ship that ends up being destroyed, and you find that it only took damage on one side, then you did not command that ship as effectively as you could. You want to rotate the ship. You want to get the most out of its armor. Now, the Saratoga did get some good hits on our right side before we were able to pull off that turn. So they were able to damage our hull just slightly. But again, the Asteria and the Berserk class in general is proving to be much more effective than the quote-unquote glass cannon. I know. Does it sound like I really took offense to that charge, that it's a glass cannon? And also, maybe you can see through my bullshit a little bit. And I'm not trying to bullshit you, really, but obviously I'm trying to give a positive angle, positive spin, as it were, to all of the colonial ships. Because in the campaign, anyways, that's what you're going to be fielding. So we want to be optimistic about the ship. You don't want to hand a captain a ship and be like, yeah, this thing's a glass cannon, man. You're screwed. No. Especially when that can be disputed or refuted, you know. And I think just demonstrated by this video, we're doing just that. After all, even in the description of the Berserk class, it clearly spells out for you that it should not engage enemies alone. It should do so, you know, alongside a battlestar or with a fleet strike group. Well, in this case, we're doing it alone. Well, maybe that's not entirely accurate. We're doing it with 2 Raptors. But I think that's the bare minimum, folks. Anyways, the Talon has been destroyed. We're going to go ahead and check out the replay. And I'll kind of go over some things with you as we watch this. So I think what we've learned, or anyways what we've discussed, is that Raptors are pretty damn effective, especially when it comes to boosting your firewall. delivering ordnance-wise. You know, if a Berserk carrier did decide to equip itself with Raptors, that is to say, dedicate its hangar to the Raptors, well, in effect, what it would be doing, it would be taking on ordnance that it otherwise does not have. Because the Raptors give it those rockets. It would be boosting its firewalls. It would be adding more point defense. Of course, you can get that point defense from Vipers. But point defense is an important thing to keep in mind, and something that is often overlooked by myself and others that I play with alongside. Lovely that we took out those missiles, isn't it? Just absolutely gorgeous. And you know, that wasn't even that long of a engagement. I think this whole video will probably go slightly over 20 minutes. Here comes that hack. And granted, they were able to hack unimpeded for a little bit. Well, impeded only by our defensive posture. But, you know, those Raptors came right in for the save. And boy, did they achieve a save. So much so that, as you recall, we were able to go into offensive posture despite the hack and blow this nemesis out of space. Really good stuff, folks. You know, the game does tell you that this ship shouldn't engage alone. Granted, we're cheating a little bit by bringing in those Raptors, but boy, it seems to be holding its own. And even at the end of the day, only its starboard side was really damaged, and its overall hull was slightly damaged. So, I mean, the final verdict from me is that this is a good ship, and I know what you're going to think. You're going to think, well, you just told us that you're going to spin this a little bit in a positive light. And yes, I am, but I don't think there's a colonial ship out there that isn't capable of doing its job. Here go those Raptors coming in to fire their ordnance. And again, they're going to want to get in close. I don't think we could in the current turn, so they're going to loop back. But now that they're right up against it, and to effect that, we didn't just move. Obviously, we told them to engage the target. Lovely. Just lovely. Frankly, I would say that the Talon, in and of itself, is comparable to the Berserk. But the Talon already wasted its Raptor Squadron. Had it not, it could be utilizing that squadron right now and forcing us to keep either our Vipers or our Raptors back at the Asteria. So we've got a great firing vector, though we don't want to keep our right side of the ship, so as you know, we're going to come about, and this will pretty much mark the end of the battle. The Cylons just could not deal with this carrier and pair of Raptors. So again, to review, when commanding this thing, you want to focus on those broadsides, fly low. Don't rush in with this ship, especially since it does have squadrons under its command. Do not rush in. And finally, make the most of it. It's a good ship. Anyways, folks, that'll about do it for this discussion. This is Automatic for Automatic Games. If you like this, and if you are subscribed, I will talk to you soon, friends.